Okay, I think we're going to get going with the program. I want to leave plenty of time here for Mike. Mike, you got about an hour yet if you want to think about how you want to use your time. So Michael and I go way back. I was thinking about our friendship goes back probably, almost 20 years because our boys are about 40 now, turning 40 this year. And Mike and myself and Theo Polly and one other gentleman were co-coaches of a softball team called the Orange Crush. We have orange shirts, so we came up with the Orange Crush, and I think we found some old Orange Crush soda pop cans and got that to the boys. So we got to know each other back then, and then Mike and I have been friends, and I've had an opportunity to follow Mike's career and his life history, and it's been a pretty interesting, awesome travel and journey. So Mike, you might know, first of all, anybody remember Smoke Stoppers, which started in this community, what was it, in the 80s probably, was it?
70s.
70s, okay. So, kind of you remember, but it was one of the first health promotion products in this country that was helping, and I think it's still going on, helping people to stop smoking. And it was a really powerful program. A lot of people at that point were just realizing the severe dangers of smoking. And Mike and Tom, I'm forgetting Tom's last name, Cannellan, right? Kinnear. No, Tom Cannellan. There's two Toms. Tom Cannellan started this program, and geez, how many thousands of booklets? Probably millions, yeah, of people that went through that. Anybody in this program? Anybody go through that? Stop smoking. A lot of people did, and it's a great program. Then he's gone on to be an expert in the area of health promotion. He's done all kinds of programs, worked with lots of people. I know Ted, you know him quite well from Ted's was part of Health Media, and he's also been a very dedicated writer. He's written 6 or 7 books, I think, at this point. Many of them about his personal journeys and about the stories of the people that he's worked with. And then, when was it that you were diagnosed, Mike?
16 years ago.
16 years ago, Mike was diagnosed with breast cancer. And he has survived and has told a story about what it was like to be a male with breast cancer and how he dealt with this. And he's going to be talking a lot today about a book that came out of that experience, post that experience, that was, I would say, your effort at recovering your spirit and soul to get back. And it's a great book. Michelle, can you hold that up? I think it's over my desk on the table there, yeah. And we've got the copies of the book. One of our other partners is Literati Books, and they're going to be here, and Mike will sign copies afterwards. They're going to be out in the lobby there. So when we're done, if you'd like to get a signed copy of the book, use it as a Christmas present or whatever, it would be great. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Mike Samuelson.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. Actually, we go back 35 years ago, but I find that increasingly interesting as you get older and older. It becomes not 5 years. That was 10 years, wasn't it? Maybe it was 20. I think it was 30, 35, 40. So it's my pleasure to be here. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come at leadership from a different perspective. Not your usual suspects in terms of leadership. So I'm going to talk about all of the leadership lessons that come from everyday experiences and perhaps some of your more exotic experiences. So certainly there are thought leaders like Rob, like Ted Dacko, like many of you that you learn from kind of the theoretical and then also from experience in business itself. But I'm going to talk a different way of learning as we go through this process. So we want to hold on as we take a look at this. By the way, all the photography here is mine, so I took all of these. So this has been part of the journey. Now, so this is all the stuff in terms of, this is resume stuff. So I did all that. By the way, it was wonderful listening to where you are, where you have been, because I have been part of that journey. So as we look at 70 much closer now than we did look at 20 years ago, we see all the different steps along the journey. So I was in the Vietnam era, always point out the fact that I was not in country, I was not in combat, but I served during that particular time. So I've been a teacher, I've been a counselor, I've taught here at Michigan, also was a professor at the University of Rhode Island, an entrepreneur, executive, all those different kinds of letters you have associated with your name. So I've had all of those. Oh, by the way, the only one I carry now is Michael H. Samuelson, CI. And the CI part of that means that my responsibility is the chief irritant. So my wife gave me that title, by the way, so I think after 46 years she could do that. And by the way, it's very important to be an irritant in your organization. It's the person who is not complacent, who recognizes that things are fine but maybe could be a little better, but always has solutions as well as the irritation part of it. So that's kind of my responsibility these days. So I do all that stuff, wrote some books. I've been an advisor in Washington with 3 different presidents on health policy. So a lot of things along the journey. But that's the resume stuff. The stuff that is important to all of us is this stuff. So when you're talking about your jobs and your ambitions and your goals and your professional experience, I know what's behind that. And this is what's behind that. The reason you do all of that. And so don't ever lose sight of that. Years ago, I did an interview someplace, and it was called Personal Development Always Precedes Professional Development. So the importance of making sure along this journey that you don't forget about all of this stuff. So I've been so blessed for 46 years with a life partner, my dear wife. I'm a parent, 3 kids, grandparent, a writer. I climb mountains all over the world, photographer, all that stuff. So that's who I am. The other stuff is what's written about me, and that's not me. This is me. So I said I'm a grandparent, and as 1 week ago, this is our 5th grandchild. So those of you who have been along this journey, there's nothing like that. So it was a week ago over at the University of Michigan that our daughter, after 21 hours of labor, talk about putting your energy into your work. This is the product of that. So this is our newest edition. So this is Julian Hayes Moore. And as Michael Hayes Samuelson, I'm very proud to introduce the newest member of our family. So, all right. So let me get going with this. This book, actually, like I said, this is my 6th book. And they vary in terms of what they're about. But this particular one came about when I was having a conversation with my mom and dad. And I've had these conversations with them, 20 years with my mom, about 30 years with my father. So asking them all kinds of questions, everything from what was it like during the Depression, what was it like during the occupation days, who's this funny looking guy with a mustache in the family album, how do you fix a broken window? I mean, all kinds of questions. Unfortunately, they were always one-sided conversations because they've been gone. My father died 30 years ago. My mother died 20 years ago. So I turned to our bright children, all in their 30s, and I said, gosh, don't let this happen. Any question you have, please ask me. Ask me anything, and I will tell you. So our bright children who have bright children, nothing. Nothing, not a single question. And then it dawned on me, it's not their responsibility to ask the question, it's our responsibility to give the answers. That's part of the give back of being a parent. It's part of the give back of being a person who has gone through all the different aspects of business that you people are involved in. There are many questions you can't ask us because you haven't been there. You don't know what you don't know. So the responsibility and the beauty of organizations like this is that we get to tell you. We get to give you our advice. We get to give you our opinions because we've kind of been there. I've had success along the way, but a lot of failures along the way. So the value comes when we say, yes, 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 but watch out for that hairpin turn up there because it pretty much is going to happen, and be cautious about this, and have you considered this or that? So that becomes the value of these kinds of local organizations. And by the way, it's a pleasure for me to just roll out of bed, jump in my car, and drive here. Most of my talks are all over the country, all over the Western world. So it's a pleasure to do this here. And I'm going to tell you my favorite health promotion story. And so this happened to me here at Bally Fitness, probably now 20 years ago or so, at least. And I was on the life cycle, And as Rod mentioned, and you could see, I'm a mountaineer, so I've climbed mountains all over the world after being diagnosed with cancer. And so I was on the life cycle, I'm pedaling away, and all of a sudden a young instructor comes over and she said, "Sir," and I said, "Yes." She said, "Sir, we have a new piece of equipment here that I think you would really enjoy." And I said, "Oh, yes, and what is that?" And she said, "Well, sir, it's called a recumbent bicycle." And I kind of smiled at her and said, "Well, this is fine, thank you very much, I appreciate it." Well, she's a dedicated Ann Arbor, she's not going to give up on this, so she hovers around for a little while, and she comes back and she said, "Sir," and I said, "Yeah." She said, "Sir, we have found that for people like you," I know where she's going with this. This is a better piece of business. I said, "Well, thank you very much, I appreciate that, but I really do like the life cycle." Okay, well, she's not going to go away. So she's standing there, and you could hear the wheels turning, the smoke begin to bellow, and she's trying to figure out, how do I tell this old fella to get off of that bike? So she comes back again, and she said, "Sir," and I said, "Yes." And she said, "Sir, we have found that for the chronologically superior, that this is a better piece of business." I said, you mean I'm getting old and my prostate could use a break?" And she said, "Yes, sir, that's it, that's it." So I stand before you chronologically superior. So you can keep that in mind. It wasn't that much longer when I was back in my running days, and I was finishing a 3-mile jog, and we lived out in Saline. So as I was finishing this up, I turned around. It's not unusual, people get lost in that area in terms of finding I-94. So as I'm finishing the run, a car pulls up behind me very, very slowly, and I look back and I can see a little old lady. She can barely see above the steering wheel. And as I'm about to slow down and say, "Go up here and make a right-hand turn at Amberstein Road, then I-94, and you'll find it there." So as I turn to say all that, she rolls the window down and she said, "Sir, would you like a ride?" I said, "No, actually, I'm doing this on purpose." And she said, "Well, that may well be, sir, but you look like you could use a ride." And I think that's a pretty good metaphor, actually, in terms of this journey that we're all on. There are times when you do need a ride. There are times when you need somebody to stop by and say, "Are you okay? Can I help you along the journey?" So part of that is the background moving into what I'm talking about. So with that in mind, I wrote this particular book, and this particular book are 39 lessons that I've learned from Sherpas, from guides, from individuals along my journey that are not the usual suspects in terms of teaching leadership. And recognizing that you can learn leadership from your dog, you can learn leadership from your 5-year-old, you can learn leadership from the milk can. You can, from my daughter, a week ago, 21 hours of labor. Now, I have no clue what that means, but I watched it with my baby going through it. So she obviously was there the whole time. Her husband was there the whole time. My wife was there for 16 hours of it. I was there for 8 hours of it, in agony watching her go through this process. She was delightful. Whenever a doctor or nurse came in, she was polite. She was more concerned about them. And I'm thinking, boy, that is leadership. That's handling things with dignity and with grace and going through the whole process of the journey. So it comes from a variety of places. When I conclude with this, by the way, so start thinking about it, I'm going to ask you at your table to talk about leadership lessons that you've learned from an unusual suspect. Not from the Robs of the world, not from the Ted Dackles of the world, not the professors, but from unusual places. And I want you to start looking for those opportunities to learn. To recognize that it doesn't come packaged with white hair. It doesn't come packaged with a lot of initials after one's name. It comes from a lot of life experience from those willing to share. So think about that as we finish this up. Okay, I'm going to give you this just as a ground set. So Rod mentioned the fact that I had a cancer experience. The interesting thing about this is that all of us along the way, we have these opportunities. Often these are very strangely wrapped gifts that are presented to us, and at the time, boy, they don't feel like a gift. But later, with retrospect, with learning, with maturity, you start to mine them in terms of the value that they provided. And this is a local story because it was April 8th, 1999. I had just finished a new writing. I just finished running a 10K. It was time for taxes. So I went down to Wright Griffin Davis to have my taxes done. by Rod Byrne, who was a dear friend of mine for years and years and years. So I went in and I took a look at Rod, and he looked kind of peaked, didn't look very good. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Well, actually, I'm in my second round of chemotherapy." It was one of those moments where you stop and you say, how do we let life get so busy that we're not even aware of things like this? And he saw the look on my face, and he said, "Yes, I had a radical mastectomy back in January." Now you have to understand, I have lectured on health issues from Brussels to Boston for now going on 40 years. At that time, I had never heard of what he was saying. Not only did he say he had cancer, but he said he had breast cancer. Again, he saw the look on my face, and he said, "Yeah, surprised me too." I gave him a big hug. I said, "I'll say a prayer for you." I walked out of his office. I walked down the hall. I walked down the stairs onto Main Street in Ann Arbor, going to my car. First time in my life, I do a self-breast exam. And you know, in Ann Arbor on Main Street, a guy doing a self-breast exam is no big deal. So I stopped dead in my tracks, because right behind the right nipple, hard as a rock, there is something. It's like a half a marble. It's like a large BB. It doesn't hurt, but it's solid. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a second. I never heard of anything like this until 20 minutes ago. I mean, what are the likelihood that anything's going on? Remember, I wrote the book on all this stuff. So the importance of early detection, early intervention. I'm also a guy. So born in the 40s, raised in the 50s. We don't like to talk about these. We don't like to think we have breasts, by the way. We have pecs, but we don't have breasts. I can't ignore this. And so I called Bob Reiki, who was my family doc, and I tell Bob, and he says, "Oh, Michael, I've not dealt with it personally, but you know we can always take you. If you'd like to come in, come on in." Here's an opportunity for the Y chromosome to say, "Oh, okay, fine, thanks," and not do anything. Again, I've got to do something about it. I go, I can't see Bob. I see Toby Jacobowitz, a female physician. Toby takes a look, and she said, "Michael, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I've not dealt with this. I've had a colleague back in medical school. It's probably just a cyst. I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you'd like, here's a referral to Manny Marcus, a surgeon in town." Okay, I've had 2 docs who have said, "Don't worry too much about it. I'm an old guy. Most guys would just crumple and walk away. I can't walk away. So I've got to go." And I go see Manny Marcus, a brilliant surgeon in town. And he said, "Gosh, Michael, I'm not sure what this is. I've not dealt with it. But, you know, we could always, we could take it out if you want. We could do a mammogram." And I said, "I'm sorry, what?" He said, "Well, we could always do a mammogram." And I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm a guy. Besides that, my wife says that really hurts." And I said, He said, "Let's just take it out." So you know how the story progresses. So it was at Chelsea Medical Center. It was the last appointment on Memorial Day weekend back in 1999. Laugh, 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 joke, joke, joke. Who's got this? Who's got that? And I'm fully awake for the procedure. And then he cuts into me. All the chatter stops. For the next 45 minutes, all I hear the clanging of surgical instruments. They go to suture to close, it won't stop bleeding. They have to open me up again. Suture to close, it won't stop bleeding. They have to open me back up again. And then finally, they have to cauterize. So again, I'm fully conscious during this process. And then Manny leans down and he looks at me and he says, "Michael, I don't know what this is. I don't think that it's cancer." And at that moment, every fiber in my body had a pretty good idea what was going on. Very long weekend. The path lab was closed for the holiday. Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock. Phone rings, "Dr. Marcus, Michael, no good news." "I'm sorry, what?" No good news. You have cancer. Of a bigger concern, you have a grade 3 tumor, and we need to get it out immediately. You have to understand, if I had not gone that day, had he not shared that information with me, had I not foregone the Y chromosome and went and got assistance from my community, I wouldn't be here. It would have been a very fast-spreading cancer that would have landed in my lungs, and they would have said, "Oh, what irony. All that work that Michael did in the early days with tobacco control to die with lung cancer." So turn on your radar. Keep your radar turned on. And guys, drop all this macho stuff. You know what's macho? Dancing at your children's weddings, holding your grandchildren. That's what's macho. So it's been a 16-year journey from that point on. So I was told at that point, get comfortable, you've had a good life. Boy, that just didn't set with me. Not at that point, because I was beginning to recognize life not in monochrome, not in just technicolor, but in high definition. everything I saw took on a whole new appearance. So I went off and I said, nope, I'm gonna go on a journey. And so I set off on a journey. And this journey has involved meeting all kinds of individuals, people who said you can do this, those who said you can't do this, those who have assisted, victories, defeats, all through the hero's quest. Any Joseph Campbell fans here? Love Joseph Campbell. I think he's my grandfather. When I think that Joseph Campbell's been gone for over 30 years, it's hard for me to fathom. But the whole process, and we all go through the process, and it's very important. At the very end, what do? You take the boon, you take the treasure, and you share it. You don't hold it. You share it. So part of what this is all about, part of what Rob has been his entire life, his whole career, is about sharing. So that's what we're going to do very quickly, is take a look at sharing some of the boon that comes from this. Again, I've taken all these photographs. It requires, first of all, that you leave the village of someday. You know where that village is? It's that village where you say, not today, someday, but not today. Honestly, wait till the kids grow up. Wait till we have more money. Wait till I feel better. Wait till I lose some weight. Someday, honest. It's a very, very crowded village. It's a hard village to get out of once you're inside. It's a gated community. So the first thing you have to do, and all of you in this room have done this, you are entrepreneurs, you people are entrepreneurs, you're building inside and outside of your companies, you have left the village of someday. And when you do that, it's important to recognize that there's lots of risk and there's lots of opportunity, but if you never leave, you know exactly what tomorrow is going to bring, because it was yesterday, and it's going to be the day after that. So leaving the village of someday is the very first step. So in my case, that was, do I sit on the couch? Do I count my blessings? Do I think back to all of the good things that I've had? Or do I throw on my boots and do I start the journey? And my response to that, with the support of my lovely, lovely life partner, my Hillary, for 46 years, my wife, she said, go for it. And so I did. So the first thing I did was I went back to Alaska to get recertified in technical climbing. So it was kind of fun when I first set out to do this, because I went to my doc and I said, I have to have a clearance for me to do this. And he said, to do what? And I said, well, I'm going to go get recertified in technical climbing. He said, you mean you're going to go hiking? I said, well, actually, I'm going to go get recertified in technical climbing. That means ropes and pickaxes and crampons and all of that. And he said, okay, I'm going to sign this, Michael, but you realize that you're not 24 years old anymore. You're not 34 years old. Michael, you're not 44. Michael, you're not. And I said, I get the idea. Are you telling me it's impossible for me to do this? And he said, well, no, but let's be honest. It's highly improbable. Okay, here's the difference. Because when you're dealing with possibility, you're dealing with physics. When you're dealing with probability, you're dealing with spirit. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something if it's within the realm of possibility. That's yours. You own it. There's everything to do with you. I've watched so much in this world occur when people set their mind to it, set their passion to it, had the resources, had the support, and did things that people said, you can't do it. Oh, yes, you can. So I went off to get technically certified again. So each of these opportunities, there were lessons. So when I was here, I have to tell you, it was not easy. And I went with Derek, one of our sons, who at that time Derek was 19, he was in college. And so he went with the old man and we went off and got certified. And I remember there were days when we were on the mountainside and we're going through snow and we're climbing mountains and that snow is up to my hips. And I'm not sure if I can take 3 steps. Seriously, I'm not sure if I can take 3 steps. And then I realized I don't have to. How many steps do I have to take? All I got to take is one. All I got to do, I got to take one step through this process. I learned so much in terms of slowing down, making sure you have the strength, making sure you have the proper leaders around you. We got to a situation where we are so close to the summit of one of these mountains. These are the Cathedral Peaks in eastern Alaska, and I can't go any further. By the way, most accidents with mountaineers occur in the last 50 yards. It's where you get loose, it's where you get lazy, it's where you get very, very tired, it's where you feel sorry for yourself, it's where you push yourself when you need to stop and rest. And I remember very, very carefully, there's a 6-foot crevasse that all I've got to do is jump over. The rest of the team has jumped over this crevasse. They have gone up to the top. They're looking out over unbelievable beauty, including my son is up there. I'm looking at this. I had one of the guides next to me, and he said, Michael, you don't have to go now. You don't have to go now. You can sit in and rest. And I said, no, I can go. I can do it. I can do it. He said, no, you can't. No, you can't. The importance of a guide is an individual who can say to you, no, you can't, when you can't, and can say, get moving, you can, when you can. And that's a trust relationship. So I stopped with Scott. He was a Vietnam veteran, and we talked and talked. We relaxed. I heard people calling, come on over, come on up. And he waited and waited and waited, and finally I had the strength, the energy. I flew over the crevasse. I went there and I looked up and I saw my son Derek, who had found an abandoned eagle's nest. And he was sitting there looking out over incredible beauty. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous day. You tell me, what was more beautiful? The scene out there or the scene of me looking up at my 19-year-old man-child? Oh, please. It was everything for me to watch him. Did I know? Is that why I went to Alaska? Is that why I climbed the mountain? No, but that's part of the journey. It's a very important part of the whole process. As his mind was thinking and wondering about the future and what was going on. So I learned so much from that particular experience. So I got back and I said, Bob, you know what? I would really like to go to Mount Everest. Oh, you should have seen the look on his face as he's trying to find some kind of code for psychosis that I can write down for this. He said, are you serious? And I said, I'm not concerned about summiting Everest, but I want to go. I want to see it. I want to get to the base camp. I want to climb as many mountains in the Himalaya as I possibly can. So he kind of shook his head. He said, there's no sense in my having the possibility discussion with you. And I, nope, because it's not about that. It's not about the rock. It's about taking the one step. So he signed off on it, and so I head off to the Himalayas. What an incredible experience that was, to be able to climb. When you climb, any mountaineers here? Well, you know them. There are rabbits and there are turtles in the process of it, and I felt a responsibility to uphold the tortoises of all of these journeys. It was my responsibility to do it. But it wasn't about the race to the top. It was about the one step in the process, things you learn. Here's a lesson I learned in terms of one of my leaders there, an incredible lesson. And by the way, there are MBA schools that take Wharton will take people there for a whole semester just to go through the experience of getting to the base camp. So we're climbing, and we're up at probably 18,000, 19,000 feet, and it's getting very arduous. And I'm still on tamoxifen. Oh, by the way, tamoxifen. What a fun... Tamoxifen is a drug that's used for breast cancer. It was done with clinical trials of about 30,000 women and me. Because what do you do with a man? So you give them tamoxifen. It's a very, very difficult drug, particularly for somebody like me. I remember, if you're not in menopause, it gives you menopause-like symptoms. So you have hot flashes and you have night sweats. I'm here to tell you that my wife and I, we shared menopause. So I put the men in menopause, and we'd be someplace, and she would say, is it hot in here? And I said, well, it was hot, and then I was sweating, and now I'm freezing as I'm sitting in my sweat. So that whole by the way, she thinks every guy should go on tamoxifen for at least 6 months. Just to get a sense of what that's all about. So I was in the throes of all of that, going through this particular process, and then all of a sudden, Angnima Sherpa, who was our lead Sherpa, comes up to me, and he says, Michael, give me your pack. But I, no, Angnima, really, I'm fine, I don't know. And he said, Michael, give me your pack. No, really, I'm Nima, little Nepalese guy, me, big Western guy. No, I'm fine. Michael, give me your pack. Thank God I asked that third time. I was exhausted. I so needed somebody to help me, but I had too much macho, I had too much Y chromosome, I had too much arrogance to say I needed help. 4 days, Nima had his and he had mine. The 5th day, outside my tent, there is my pack. Just there's my pack. So I went up to our leader out of International Mountain Guides in Seattle, and I said, that was amazing. That was incredible. What do I do? A $500 additional tip for him, $1,000. The look of horror on my guide from International Mountain Guides as he said, Michael, he wouldn't understand your question. He didn't pick that up for $500. He didn't pick it up for $1,000. He picked it up because in his world, you and he are the same person. There's no difference. He had the energy. You didn't have the energy. That's why he picked up your pack. He doesn't want anything, doesn't need anything. It's part of a collective. This is all one energy source, and we share. And it was like, wait a second, didn't my mom tell me that stuff when I was a kid? That you do things because it's the right thing to do, that you're compassionate because you're compassionate, that you don't do things so that somebody else will do something for you. Did I have to go to the Himalayas to learn that lesson? I don't think so, but boy, did it drive it home. Oh yeah, it really drove it home. That whole idea that if you have energy, you share energy. Again, that's what this is all about. It's not about hoarding energy. It's not about hoarding knowledge. It's all about sharing knowledge and energy. So that was one of many things I learned from the Everest experience. Here's another one that was just remarkable. So we are climbing, and this young gentleman from Tibet, who I later found out is 15 years old, because we sat down and we had a nice chat through an interpreter, and he was traveling the equivalent of about 150 miles back and forth from Tibet to Namche Bazaar. Anybody been to Nepal? Namche, you know where that is. And so Namche is the highest altitude year-round living spot in the world. And there's quite a commercial center there. So he would come and he would bring his blankets to sell his blankets, and then he would go back to Tibet and he would get more. So we sat down when he was on a break and was talking to him about it, because he didn't know, by the way, that he was miserable. He didn't know, he thought he was happy. He was singing, he was whistling, he was enjoying the moment, and it was like, but dude, you're carrying about 100, I mean, come on, you're wearing flip-flops, this can't be fun. He didn't know any of that stuff. So we talked about, where is your home? And he said, it's right here. And I said, no, but where are you from? And he said, right here. Well, where is your culture? And he said, it's right here. That's where it is. So that whole process of compartmentalizing work and play and place doesn't exist for this particular culture. Wherever he was his home. Whatever he was doing was his work. Whatever what he was doing was his play, was his love. That's his world, wherever he currently is. 15-year-old kid hauling blankets back and forth from Tibet into Nepal. Did I have to go to Nepal to learn that? I think I heard it someplace. But I just learned an incredible leadership lesson from a 15-year-old young man who went off whistling and singing on his way to Namche Bazaar. Remarkable. Along the way, when I was a CEO and all those other initials, in my boardroom, this picture was there in all of its glory to remind people, I don't want to hear a lot of complaining. You could be doing all, but I want to hear whistling, I want to hear singing, so you have that. So then I went off to, as a writer, I am a huge Hemingway fan. So my books aren't just about the journey. I write a lot of different kinds of books. But I really wanted to get there because the snows are melting on Kilimanjaro. So I wanted to get there. So again, you know the routine. You have to be certified by your doc that you can do this. And Bob I don't even think I'd go see him. He just faxed me the signature. So I was all set to go. And when you get there, anybody been to Kilimanjaro, done the Kilimanjaro? Boy, put it on your bucket list. Just a remarkable, you go through all 5 climate zones. So you start off in the rainforest, and then you finish a course in a glacier. And in between, you meet yourself many, many times along the journey, because it is an arduous journey. More people die in this process than die in Everest, because they don't take it seriously. There's 19,353 feet involved in getting to the true summit of Kilimanjaro. And by the way, it's that last 53 feet that's the killer. But so an incredible journey to do that. The whole time you can see Everest. Once you get out of the rainforest, you can see Everest, but it's 6 days away. But you keep looking at it. It's like a mirage. It seems to get further and further away. The whole idea of keep your eye on the prize, keep focused, keep going for that goal, whatever it might be, keep going for it. Every day we would see this, and it got closer and closer and closer. And our goal is to go to the absolute, complete, total summit of Kilimanjaro. And there we are. So we took what's known as the whiskey route to the summit of Kilimanjaro. There's a number of routes. And so the whiskey route, as you might think, is a little bit tougher. than some of the other ones, and it's a 7-day journey. And the last leg, your base camp is, you leave a base camp about 10 o'clock at night, and then you climb through, and it's snow and it's ice, and then you arrive at the summit, the true summit, just as the sun is rising over Africa. I can't begin to tell you, first of all, the tears that come from that kind of experience are just amazing. You can't stay there too long because there isn't any air, so you've got to turn around and immediately go down 10,000 feet. But once you're there, it's just a remarkable experience of being there. You can actually see curvature when you're at the summit. Now, getting to the summit required teamwork. As we're going up there, I'm recognizing that my lamp is going in and out, in and out, in and out. I had the wrong headlamp. You get at altitude, you get at that kind of temperature, and you need a different kind of lamp. One of the other climbers, there were 9 of us, an international group, of course was carrying an extra one. He said, "Here, Michael." So he had one for me. Another woman in the group, she had a bad knee. I had a knee brace in my backpack. I didn't need it. I said, "Here, you've got this." We get to the summit. Somebody's camera doesn't work because they didn't put it against their bare skin. And of course the batteries wouldn't work at that summit in that coldness. So we each took pictures of her and her companion so she would have plenty. So we did it as a group. That's how we made the summit. That's how we came down. So then it was off to Salcantay, off to Peru, off to Machu Picchu, off to South America. The lesson that I learned in this particular adventure, if you look closely, you can see that that snow doesn't look all that stable. That's because this is an avalanche. And I, like any reasonable tourist, had paused to take a picture of an avalanche coming directly at me. I actually had the movie camera portion going as well, but there were too many expletives to delete, and so I can't use it. But as we're going through the pass, Salcantay Pass, in the Andes of Peru, all of a sudden you hear what sounds like jets overhead. And then you realize that there are no jets, and you turn around and you see this. Our guide, Jaime, from Peru, he turns around and he's just looking at it. He's not moving, and I'm thinking, we should be doing something other than taking pictures at this point. Well, what he knew and what we didn't know was that there's an ancient crater there, a lake. An ancient lake is there, and he knows that that avalanche is going to dump right into that crater, never going to get us except a dusting. Well, there's a lot of lessons there. One of them is, when you go on these journeys, make sure that you have thoroughly investigated your guides. Trust your guides. Don't go cheap in terms of your, whatever are your guides, whoever are your coaches, whoever are your mentors, whoever are your supervisors, whoever are your CEOs, you are going to match them footfall for footfall, and you better be confident that they're not going to take you into a crevasse, that not going to take you over the side of the mountain. Because when you're going there is not the time to argue. It's the time to pay attention to your leader. It is literally a matter of life and death when you do that. This one is just, this is actually the only photograph taken that I didn't take. This was taken by a very talented photographer, Ian Lauder, out of Spokane, Washington. This is on a path to Machu Picchu that nobody has taken before. Nobody. What an arrogant thing to say. That no modern individual guides have ever gone on. So it's not on any guide path. We were forging a new path with this group out of International Mountain Guides. Pristine, pristine, pristine. To awake and look out at this sky awakened an 8-year-old little boy in me. I had never think. The wonder of life, the wonder of the galaxy, the wonder of the universe, let the child out. As I'm standing out there and I'm looking out, I felt like I was an 8-year-old kid at Lake Erie in the 1950s looking at a sky I'd never seen before. Of course, I'd never seen this sky before. I had not been in the southern hemisphere to see this particular sky. So I'm standing there with a guide and I'm asking, what is this and what is that? And he's saying, do you see the Southern Cross? You see this? You see that? It's the wonder. Don't lose the wonder. Don't lose the 8-year-old boy. Don't lose the 8-year-old girl inside you. You need that person in your leadership. So make sure that you do that. That was that lesson. Well, then this is Machu Picchu. So we make it into Machu Picchu. So here's a quick story of Machu Picchu. Anybody been to Machu Picchu? It's getting really crowded, isn't it, in Machu Picchu? It still is incredible. So that was on my list of things to do. I was 3 days away from going to Machu Picchu on this particular trip when I was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery that resulted in a resection and a very, very long recovery process. 3 days away from going. If I had been in Cusco when all of a sudden this happened, I probably wouldn't be here as well. What I did, though, when I got back from the hospital is I went on the internet, I found a picture of Machu Picchu, and I put it on my screensaver. It was my screensaver. For an entire year, that was my screensaver. Every time I went to the computer, that's what I saw. Whenever, that's what I looked at for a whole year. After all of this hiking through the mountains, the Salcantes, through the Andes, down on the Inca Trail, off into Machu Picchu, I took, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 pictures along the journey. I came back to do the editing process. I picked the one that I liked better than any of them, and it's this particular picture of Machu Picchu. I thought to myself, wait a second, that looks very, very familiar. It ended up to be the exact same screensaver that I had taken randomly off the internet. It was emblazoned into my head, so that I knew that as I'm going through, there was something special about that. Don't lose your dreams. Paint your pictures. Create your reality. It doesn't matter if it takes you a year, a day, 5 years, 10 years. It's still going to happen as long as you hold on to that dream, hold on to that vision. So that was an incredible experience. And I'll finish up with this one, and that was last November. By the way, if you see me limp a little bit, it's because they took a look at my right hip last April. They said, this is no good. They took a stainless steel crowbar, yanked it out, threw it away, and put in a new one for me. I think this one finished it off, and it was the Galapagos Islands. I wanted to go to the Galapagos Islands. And Aunt Connie, see, I can call her Aunt Connie because my children call Dr. Doyle Aunt Connie, so I can call her Aunt Connie. So she's been there. Anybody else been to the Galapagos Island? Put that, oh my goodness, put that on your list. Probably of all the adventures I've had, remember, they all came after the age of 50, after being diagnosed with cancer, after being told to get comfortable. All the learnings that occur, sometimes when your hair turns blonde, you have more opportunities. And so I had more opportunities. So I was off to the Galapagos Islands. The things that you see, the beauty that you see experienced, can be experienced only there. Here's the lesson, here's the leadership I got, and this one comes in a very, very tiny package. We had just a month before had a tragedy in our family where my oldest son and his wife lost their baby in the 8th month of pregnancy. And she had to deliver stillborn. And so that whole horrific tragedy, and we're a very close family, so we rally around one another, but of course, as you can well imagine, it was a very, very difficult time. So a month later, I sneak on top of the deck of the Endeavour. I went with the National Geographic, so it was all photographers, National Geographic, and so you're not supposed to be on the deck by yourself early in the morning. I didn't particularly care about that rule, so I went out there, and I'm standing, and of course they're in the bridge, but there's nobody there except me. And I look out, and all of a sudden, coming down from the sky are these beams of light that don't quite hit the ocean. They just hover there. As I'm thinking about this little one, as I'm thinking about my family, all of a sudden this appears. I don't care what you worship. I don't care if it's bricks and mortar. I don't care if it's organized. I don't care if it's unorganized. I don't care what it is. Recognize that there is a force, there is a spiritual nature to all of us. And if you don't access it, if you don't mine it, if you don't pay attention to it, oh, I'm so sorry. There's something else. Call it whatever you want, but there are times when you absolutely need it. Not only for yourself, but to share it with others. So this, with me, is just amazing. This, by the way, hangs now in my son and my daughter-in-law's living room, this particular photograph. And that was the Galapagos. So that was the experience. There's so many steps to this whole process. What I want to do is to encourage you, as I said at the very beginning, is to pay attention not only to the Ted Dackos, not only to the Rob Pasicks, not only to the other very, very bright men and women in this room, and those that you find in the university. Pay attention when you go to the supermarket. Is there somebody who's very kind to you? Is there a neighbor? Do you learn from somebody else's mistakes? Do you learn from somebody else's inhumanity as well as their humanity? Leadership is not only about emulating those that you'd like to be, it's also saying, boy, I don't want to do that. And making sure you file that away as well. So with our remaining time, I would like to ask you, if it's okay with Rob, to go ahead in your group and just talk about the unusual suspects where you have learned a leadership lesson that you'd like to share with somebody at the table. Again, not professorial, but somebody else. Again, it could be a dog, it could be a kid, it could be a neighbor, it could be a parent, something like that. Okay? We take
10 minutes for that, and maybe report out some of the better.
Yeah, so we'll take 10 minutes for that, and then I'd like you to stand up and if you've had a eureka moment in that process, to share it with us. All right? 10 minutes. Thank you. My son affectionately refers to this as the old man in the sea.
I just had one thing over today, lots of these sorts of I got dinner.
If we could go ahead and kind of come back. And what I would like to do is I would like to invite anybody who would like to share, and I sure would like it if at least one person from each table would share. More than one is even better. But again, part of this, folks, is to understand that it's not just the usual suspects. That pay attention and don't dismiss somebody because they're the ones who bust your table. Don't dismiss them because they're 12 years old. Don't dismiss them because you can't quite understand what they're saying. Don't dismiss anybody. Pay attention to the actions. More importantly, pay attention to the intent behind the actions from the individual. Okay? Would you like to share?
I'd like to share one incident with I learned a valuable lesson just by admiring, just by action. When I first came back to Michigan, we had our first cleanup day in Detroit. So it was we were downtown, I would say, on the east side. I'm not sure, but we had like some athletes came out, some fans came out, and we were just landscaping, just cleaning, gloves, everything, doing the whole nine. And a little kid, he's about seven, I saw him, and he was just roaming around the neighborhood, just being himself, throwing rocks, kids being kids, and just admire us just working and beautifying the lot in the areas and just cleaning it up. And by us not even like acknowledging him and just going up, he just came up and asked like politely, like, do you all like need some help? It was me, Devin Gardner, Raymond Taylor, like guys that had training and just cleaning up our areas and our communities. And he just came up, because normally just, you need some help? I was like, sure, like came in. And after that week, he didn't even know our name or that we played football for U of M or anything like that. He just intrigued, came and just like wanted to work, just saw us, admired our work, and just came in. And once we told him that we played Michigan and for football, like he was so excited, and it just made my day just from just admiring, just seeing him at a site, and then just seeing him just doing what we were doing, just catching on like little small things. I think that pretty much like taught me a little valuable lesson as far as just kids and being able to look at something and be able to be a part of it. This is one of my experiences.
I love that story, because that little guy came up because he saw that there was a need and offered to help. There was nothing that he wanted in return for it. He didn't know that these guys were big-time football players. He saw a need and he stepped up and said, can I help you? I mean, how pure is that? That is wonderful. Anybody else want to share?
I have a question. Sure. It's not a story, but I know we've all really appreciated Mandy, and I just wanted to thank Mandy. She did a fantastic job of serving us over the years. So.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Nisnay. As I said, I'm from Safe House Center. And last night we had a very special guest at Safe House Center, Glover Quinn, who is the safety for the Detroit Lions. I'm going to be the first one to say I know nothing about football. My husband knows everything about football, and I'm guessing now you're a football player, so here we are. It's about to be exposed, incredibly exposed. And first I want to thank you for your talk today, because it brought up a lot for me, because I'm involved in an endurance team sport called adventure racing, and it's all about the collective energy. But I want to talk about Glover's story last night. Game Changers came to Safe House because of Glover's commitment to working with Safe House and supporting what we're doing. And his story was, to me, unbelievable, because I look at these football players and I think it comes so easy for them. Look at them. I mean, they're in the NFL. They're awesome. They know what they're doing, and they're gifted, and they've had every opportunity handed to them, and it's not true. Glover's story is incredible. He grew up in Southwest Mississippi. His mom had to work 2 jobs. His dad had to work 3 jobs just to keep the family going. And he said that he would practice by himself by just throwing the ball up in the air and catching it, so that when his dad was ready to play ball with him, that he would be good. And everyone around him told him how great he was, how awesome he was, that he was going to make it as a football player. He only got 1 offer for playing football, and it was for a junior college. And he said, but this is my path. I am not going to give up. Even though he saw other kids going to Division I schools, he was going to do what he could do. And in fact, he took 20 credits a semester so that he would graduate faster, and so that he could get into a Division I school. And then I just looked it up to make sure I had it right. He went on to the University of New Mexico, graduated from there, played ball there. And then he was 4th round draft pick. He said, I fought through combine. I got 4th round draft pick. When I was pulled up, called up to play pro ball, they said, you're going to have to fight to stay on this team. And he fought and fought and fought, and he worked hard, and he was able to stay on the team. And then now he's with the Detroit Lions. He said, I could have given up at so many different junctures. I could have given up in high school. I could have given up because I didn't get a Division I invitation. I could have given up at all these, but I didn't. My ladder was longer to success, but it was worth every step, because now I feel much more grounded in where I'm at.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Which one should I tell about? Okay. So I too was inspired by a child. In this case, it was my son Micah, when he was about 5 years old, and he took a trip with his dad to New Jersey. It was a family event, and he was really excited. His grandmother was on the plane too, except the plane never took off because it was in January, and there was like a major snowstorm, and they were stuck on the tarmac for about 5 hours. And you can imagine how miserable people were on the plane, except my son was actually quite cheerful because he's really cute, right? And he was, the whole thing was actually kind of interesting and an adventure. And then when the plane was aborted, when that flight was aborted, and there was a possibility people could have gone on at 2 a.m, my husband wisely decided that he was going to go home with the son. And they drove home, and there was ice on the roads and a lot of snow and abandoned vehicles. My husband gets into the driveway and is totally spent and relieved. And little Micah turns to him and he goes, "Dad, let's do that again." And I love that story because somebody who teaches about mindfulness and sort of taking joy from whatever it is, that not having expectations sometimes to really, be able to get joy out of situations that may not be ideal situations. I think he was just a natural teacher of that to me. So, thank you.
More wonderful stories of those kinds of lessons because they're just so pure and innocent.
Mike, can I do a little, ask a couple more questions, and we'll get out inside of there because you're doing some pretty interesting work besides that you get to talk about. And I wonder if there's a number of healthcare workers here, and Mike is doing some fascinating work in Texas, which could use lots of work, I would understand, although they may be ahead of Michigan on healthcare, that's what you're saying. Could you tell us just a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, this is very interesting. So my career has been very interesting because along the path, people will stop and they'll tap me on the shoulder and they'll say, "Would you consider?" And I say, "Sure." So I go off and I do things. And then along the way, about 5 years ago, I got a call from a gentleman who used to be very high up here in the University of Michigan healthcare system, and he was down in Texas. I had spent a bit of time up in New England building an institute devoted solely to prevention, health promotion, disease prevention, early detection. So I did that kind of as a swan song in terms of the punch a clock kinds of things to do. And then I came back here, and he said, "Don't get comfortable. There are babies in Texas that need savings." And I was like, "Oh man, all I had to do was say babies," and he was an old friend. So what we are doing down there, and this sounds humongous, and it is we are attempting to redesign the whole healthcare system. And we're getting tremendous support from the federal government in terms of dollars to do this. But it's the recognition that no longer can we have revolving door healthcare. The business model, if you want a great business model, how about this one? You get your people in early, they progressively get deeper into it with more complexity and more dollars being spent at your business. And that's the U.S. healthcare system. Well, that's changing for a variety of reasons. And so increasingly, healthcare systems are going to move toward primary prevention, early detection, early intervention, with the citizen, I'm not using the word patient, the citizen being not a passive recipient, but an equal partner in the whole process, including accountability. So the whole idea is you provide access, you provide affordability, you provide awareness, then you can talk about accountability. So we're in I said to them, "I'll give you 3 months. I'm back in Ann Arbor. I love it. I've got grandbabies and I've got mountains to climb." Well, I'm now in my 5th year of my 3-month engagement. It's got to be coming up soon because it's so appealing. And this is going to spread across the country. Those of you who are in healthcare, those of you who are in prevention and wellness, hallelujah, the day's finally here. Because the economic model now is going to shift to keeping people out of complex health conditions. So that's the work that we're doing down there. And it is a very, very exciting work, as I said. Well funded. It will go on way after I'm dust, but our responsibility was to get it started as a model. So we're in the 5th year. The beauty for me is I've got 4 staff people down there, and I only have to go to Dallas about once a month. Thank God for FaceTime, for Skype, for all of those, because that's how I do my staff meetings with people, is to do it that way. So anybody wants any information about that, just ask me and I'll gladly share with you.
So I wanted you to tell that story because I think it's just so incredible what Mike continues to do. He keeps saying his swan song, his last act, but I think you're not going to turn to dust, you're going to turn to rock, I think is what's going to happen. So you'll be turning faster than the rest of us. But so you can stay inside a few books for us if you'll be outside. And obviously this is a wonderful book for gift. And if you know anybody, and probably how many of you have a friend or family member who's going through cancer treatment as we speak? I mean, it is so prevalent. So, it's really hard to figure out what to do to help people. So I think this book would be a great inspiration for folks. A couple of announcements. Again, we'll be back on January 15th. Vincent, Iman, and David are going to be our speakers, and we're going to be talking about Martin Luther King's legacy and how that's playing out and what's happening in Michigan right now. We've got a great program planned. We thank Bank of Ann Arbor. And one other thing, Mike Cole and I have been talking about bringing LeadersConnect to Detroit. I'm a Detroiter, native-born Detroiter, and very dedicated to see great things that are beginning to happen. So are there any people in here that might help think about how to bring LeadersConnect to Detroit? If so, could you maybe, Mike, back at that back table, maybe we can gather after the meeting, and if you could give Mike some ideas and me, we're going to talk about that. And otherwise, we'll sign off, and I wish you all a very happy holiday season. May you have your wishes come true, and all of you be able to be healthy and well into the new year. So thank you all for coming. Mike, you can go right out in the, they got the books all set up for you.